Welcome to the Create Today podcast. This show is all about how you can create the life that you want, no matter what shit you've been through. I'm your host, Karen Stanley, and my guest today is Keith Callaway, and he's been through so much shit that I've only heard 1% of it.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be fun. I didn't prep him at all. I didn't even prep at all. I just want to hear the story.
Yeah.
So, Keith, you've been sober how many years?
7.5.
Wow. Awesome. How in the world did you start? How did it all start?
Well, like hindsight's 2020,
right?
Always. So looking back, I can see maybe I had some addictive personality traits my whole life, but they didn't come out early. Like it was normal. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to be an overachiever as a student. So academics were good and sports were good. And, you know, as a kid, that's what my addictive tendencies led me to.
What did you play? What sports?
I played soccer, wrestled. Those were basically the two.
Yeah.
I did track in high school because I didn't want to ride the bus. That was
So it kept you afterwards, so someone had to come pick you up?
So someone had to come pick me up until I could drive. Because
Very
I had
smart.
this like love-hate thing with the bus driver. All of
Was
my
the same
siblings
one?
did. Yes.
You had the same bus driver, all of your siblings?
Yes. All of us. It was horrible.
That's weird.
Yeah, she was a little bit of a
Bit challenging.
She was a bit challenging and had a power trip on the bus. That was her like domain.
So how much of it was your brother's faults before you?
I was the first one on the bus.
You're the
so I
oldest.
guess like I kind of pioneered or paved the way for this issue to continue. But yeah, like the addictive personalities came out early.
In what way? You just really worked really hard?
Like
or?
sitting in a classroom and if I got the grades, if I wasn't A or A plus, I was like, oh, I failed.
Wow.
So that was the mentality that I went into I was like, I have to be good at something. And then I never tried other sports because I wanted to be, if I wasn't the best the first time, it's a no-go. I'm not ever trying it again.
Interesting.
Yeah. So just weird tendencies as I grew up like that. And then I married my first girlfriend. Also, maybe not advised.
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. How old were you?
I was 19.
Woof.
Yeah, I met her at 19. I married her at 20.
Weird. It didn't work out.
Didn't work out. I know. People were shocked.
Everyone, I'm sure.
Yeah, everywhere was shocked.
How long did it last?
Almost 10 years.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I did not expect you to say that.
Yeah, almost 10 years. And I didn't know that, it's so funny, like looking back, I'm not that old, right? I'm not, really not. I said the other day, I'm like, I'm 38, and I'm like looking back as if I've got just decades and decades of experience. And now I look back and I go, oh my goodness, I was such an idiot.
I know.
Like, the things that people told me, I was like, oh, for sure that's not going to be me. 100%. I'm the statistic.
So weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I got married to that girl, and I thought that what we were doing was like what you were supposed to.
Right.
I was like, yeah, my parents got married young. That's what happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like
all the time. What
could be wrong with that in the 2000s? And my addictive personality didn't come out because it was kind of quelled by marriage. Mm-hmm. Like we got married at 20 and 19, and so we didn't go to the bar. We didn't have friends that really drank like that. Mm-hmm. And so my addictive opportunities were lessened by the circumstances.
True. Was she a non-drinker? Was that like not cool for her? Or
like we didn't really drink.
Yeah.
Like we didn't drink for a long time, and then we were introduced to wine, and then we got like hard alcohol. But this is like your late 20s, so we're like, this is like everybody in your friend circle is either unmarried or dating or in school, or then they all of a sudden have kids, and so like the opportunities didn't come up to participate that often. And so it wasn't really something that we did a lot of. And actually we were just at a bunco night the other day, and I looked around, I was like, these drunk people are out of control. And one of the friends that watched me drink, I was like, surely I wasn't this bad. And she goes, no, you were like way past.
Way worse.
Like way, way, way. Like
I'm going to drink all of it.
Yeah. And like get emotional when people would leave. Like, why are you leaving? We're just getting started.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Just
after 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah. At like 2 a.m. when normal people stop. I was like, why is everybody leaving? We feel so good. But I didn't have any conception of that was abnormal.
Right.
Like that's what I was feeling. I was experiencing that and saying, yeah, this
awesome.
is normal. Like, why would you ever want this feeling to stop? Which in my defense is normal, but usually you go through that at like 19 or 20 or 21, not 30 or 31 or 32. So the time frame was just a decade.
You're like a pioneer and then you're a late bloomer at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm going to get married right away.
Yes. And in a number of areas, like my wife she loves music and she'll start singing something and I'm like, should I know this? Like these are things that I didn't, like there's gaps in my, my social cues and the pop culture and all these things because there's just gaps in the things
don't remember
I participated in. Yeah. Wow. Or my parents didn't let us listen to pop music because they were like, this is going to be something that corrupts you as children. I'm like,
were they super religious?
Yeah, my parents were, I was raised where my parents still go to the same church they go to today.
Wow.
40 years later.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And
something really neat about that, actually.
Yeah. So like loyalty and longevity, it's part of the family tradition. But my mom was always like her message to everything was don't sleep around. And I jokingly tell her today, I'm like, you forgot to tell me not to do drugs. Because the sleeping around thing wouldn't have been an issue if I didn't do the drugs. And somehow.
What does she say when you say that?
She's like, so now you're going to blame this on me? I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to try.
Slap you across the face.
Yeah, I'm going to try. And she goes, yeah, you can try somewhere else.
That's hilarious. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I love her already.
Yeah, she's an alpha. She raised a bunch of alphas, and she is an alpha to all the alphas.
Oh, I love it. How many siblings?
I am the oldest of 7 kids. Wow. 6 boys and a girl.
One poor girl.
Everybody says that.
I know.
She's not a poor girl. She is
probably a badass.
She can hold her own. She played on the women's national rugby team.
Whoa.
Yeah, like she's
legit.
Yeah, she's a badass. I love her.
That's
and
awesome.
she's got 4 kids under 5.
Wow. Yeah. She's a superwoman too.
Yes.
That's
and
amazing.
Gets up like yesterday morning she got up and went to the 5:30 hot yoga.
Of course.
Yeah, because that's what
you do.
Supermoms do.
When you're on vacation.
I'll take the 7.
I'll take a break.
Yeah, I'll sleep in a little.
It's
take the
vacation.
7 o'clock line. Yeah.
That's awesome.
She's good. But yeah, no, like getting into how it all started.
Yes.
Yeah, I was so shocked. The first marriage didn't work out. We separate, like circumstances, all sorts of things happen. And how I ended up doing drugs was when you are self-medicating at 29, going through a divorce, you find yourself in these places like dive bars and they're people that are hurting and
it's true.
And you can somehow relate to the pain of their life. And then I loved the bar scene because I could lie about everything in my life and tell them how successful I was and how happy I was. And nobody would go like fact check because that's just what you don't do in a dive bar. And so I loved it. I loved that people would listen to all the things you could tell the tall tales about. And then you become friends with these people and you start spending time with them and you realize like they're just as lost as you and they're lying about everything in their life to try to not live the feelings that they're feeling. And then the alcoholism that they're experiencing is similar to yours because you're just trying to numb the pain from whatever the circumstances are.
Right.
And I spent some time with some people, and if you spend enough time, like, and you kind of wear out your welcome on one spot, there's plenty more. And eventually I found myself with the wrong group of people. And this guy I was working with at the time, we were driving home from a beach trip, and there was some iced tea that we switched spots in the truck because he's about to fall asleep, like in the middle of the day, falling asleep on July 3rd of 2013, because I remember it like yesterday.
Wow.
And we switched seats because I'm like, dude, you're going to wreck the truck. Like, I can drive. Well, I didn't know that he'd put meth in his iced tea.
Oh, my God.
And we switched seats, and I drank meth for the first time in that iced tea.
I didn't even know you could drink meth.
Yeah, you can consume it any way you would like to.
Okay.
Yeah, smoke it,
You
snort
boil it? You have to boil it first? How do you even do that?
Like, you just put the powder.
No
the same
way.
stuff you would smoke, you just put it in anything. It's bitter, so it's nasty. And
you can taste it.
You can taste it, but iced tea, unsweetened iced tea is also bitter, so I didn't notice that it was abnormally bitter. And I drank it, and I will tell you, like, I talk about my first spiritual experience, and, like, I get a little clammy. I'm like, wow. It was like all of the questions in life were answered in that moment. And my whole life I'd walked around, and I didn't realize until that moment that this was what happened, is I walked around with my chin at my chest or my ears to my shoulders, just waiting for someone to come in and just hit me. Like I would just walk around anxious all the time. And in that moment, it went from complete anxiety to complete confidence, where every room I walked in, I was no longer scared. And I walked in thinking, everybody's lucky I'm here.
Wow.
Like that's the difference in what that dopamine rush of meth will do to you. And then it will slowly erode everything you have and just take it all away. Just one systematic thing at a time. It'll take your dignity, your money, your all of the things. And you'll trade it for the next high and the next high and the next high to try to duplicate that first feeling of like, I'm okay and this is the answer.
And I've heard that said before, you can never get that feeling again from the first high. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's never again the same.
No, and it was probably not much.
I was wondering, like, you didn't even know how much it was.
I had no idea how much was in the drink, but I was like, this is what the answer. This was my answer to everything. It became my answer to everything. And the crazy part of that story is I had no idea it was meth. I was like, I hit the guy and was like, what's in here? And he's like, it's Go Fast. And I'd never been around drugs. I never knew that like speed was another name for meth. And he's like, it's just a little Go Fast. I'm like, well, whatever it is, I want to go faster.
Oh my God.
Because this is amazing. Like there's no better feeling that I've ever experienced.
So was he just telling you that to make you think there wasn't drugs in it? Or is that like that's not like a word people say, right?
No. I think that he looked at me and was like, well, I can't really tell him it was meth. Because then he's going to think I'm a meth addict.
Oh,
right?
Why would he think that?
Yeah. Well, you put meth in your iced tea to drink. So there might be some correlation between.
Do you have any contact with this person?
No, I talked to him.
Do you know what happened to him?
5 years ago for just a minute. And then I haven't had.
Oh.
I imagine that he's still struggling with substance abuse because that's like 1 out of 100 makes it a year sober, and 1 out of that 100 that makes it a year sober makes it to 5 years. Like the numbers are just against everybody.
Yeah. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
The numbers?
Yeah. Why is it so hard for people to quit? I know you're chasing that high, but it's got to be something more than that.
Yeah. My opinion, and I'm no scientific background to this, is that people that end up finding drugs usually are shortcut people. They're like, how do I get from here to here fast? And they're like, oh, well, there's 10 steps. Yeah, but I could take the elevator. Like I can get to the end of this faster.
It's
easier. And when they're looking, when they finally come to, or they get like sober enough, or they get a jail stint, or they get a Dewey, or whatever it is, they look at their life and there's like, how am I going to dig out of this? Like, there's no way I'm ever going to dig out of the hole that I've created myself. And so they go back to numbing, and like their coping mechanism, the same as mine, was drugs and alcohol were the answer to everything, because it was my escape from the anxiety, the depression, the everything. And it was something that made me feel whole.
Yeah. Do you think that it's a fear of really looking at yourself and really doing the work? You just I don't want to look at my problems. I don't want to look at my trauma.
Well, I mean, if you look at society today, it makes sense. Like we are a fast track, like instant gratification group of people.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about, not nobody. Many times people will say, here's your 5 tips to get from where you are to success. And it's not 5 tips. It's like, hey, here's the first 5 things you got to do on a list of 10,000 to get to whoever it is status that you're listening to.
And you have to do it for 10,000 hours.
And you have to you have to become an expert at coping skills. If you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, like you have failed to learn any coping skills outside of drinking or doing drugs.
Got it.
And I would argue with anybody that says, oh, that's not true. I'm like, really? Show me what you do every day. And when
you get anxious, when you get depressed,
like,
or
show me what you do when this feeling comes up, and you will tell yourself by your actions that you don't believe what you're saying. Because you always go back to that thing that numbs you, or that thing that makes you feel the relief. And too often it happens. And the reason that like a lot of the people that can never get sober, it started at like 14, 13.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, I started smoking cigarettes, smoked pot, drank at 13 or 14 years old. And
Angie Manson was 11.
Yeah.
I just interviewed her last week.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. Like where are you
You're 29?
Yeah. Where are you hanging out at 11 that somebody's going to offer you a joint?
Reno, Nevada, I guess.
Yeah.
No parents were home, so they were just like on the streets
the
hanging out.
latchkey kid generation.
Yeah, but you're 29. You're like, I think this is a great year to start doing meth.
Right. Well, I didn't even know it was meth. That's the thing.
Right.
I
Okay.
had no
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Give you that.
But like, then you fast forward. And so I went from, we'll just talk about the downhill real quick.
Yeah. No,
So
I don't
go
want to fast
from-
forward, by the way. And first of all, what is a Dewey?
DUI.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Got
you
it.
can get a Dewey. I got a Dewey for alcohol and I got a Dewey for meth. So they knew I was driving under the influence of intoxicants.
Okay.
And they're like, we know that you blew zeros on the breathalyzer, but we also know that you're not there. Mm-hmm. And so they stuck me in jail and they're like, we're going to get a blood sample because we know something is not right.
Dang.
Yeah.
Did you remember that? You're not high enough to not remember.
Yeah, I remember that. I also remember mouthing off to the people that were taking the blood sample because these are the dumb things you do. So they wiped my arm with alcohol to take an alcohol sample. And so they have me strapped to, I don't play well with others when I'm in my intoxicated state. So they have me strapped to a chair to take my blood. And then I yell out, what kind of idiot takes an alcohol swab to an alcohol test? Like every lawyer in the world is going to beat that. So they keep me strapped in and 3 hours later they get one out of this arm with iodine.
Oh no.
Yeah. So these are the things, I'm smart enough to know that where I'm at, I can figure out a way out of, but I'm not smart enough to keep my mouth shut in the process to get in more trouble.
Oh my gosh. And then, okay, but let's talk about the second time. You realize it's meth, and then what do? You get to wherever you're going with your buddy?
July 3rd of 2013.
Right.
I go and actually I went rafting that weekend.
Okay.
It's 4th of July weekend and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go out with some friends. And meth is something that if you've never done it before, you'll get high for like 2 days.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I took that and it was like the last quarter of this bottle and I kept drinking it because I was like, this is great. Right. And I get high out of my mind and I go for this weekend and I don't think I slept one wink.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I slept at all. And then I got home Sunday night and just crashed. And 24 hours later, I woke up and I was like, that was worth it. We should do that again.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. That Step Brothers moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and so I didn't drink it the next time. I was like, well, show me how to do that. How do you do this?
Same buddy.
Yeah, same buddy. Pulls out the meth pipe. He's like, well, you just smoke it like this. And I was like, well, right on. Let's figure this out.
Oh my gosh.
And so I start a little at a time. It was a tenth of a gram a day or every other day. And then 720 or 780 days later, when I finally get sober, I'm doing an 8-ball a morning.
Every morning.
3 or 4 or 5 grams just to get out of bed. And I don't feel high. This is just a function, just so my mind can feel at ground zero level.
When you're up for 48 hours straight, what are you doing in the middle of the night? Is everybody up?
No.
Nobody went to sleep, or what were you doing?
This was a group of normal people. We were rafting and camping down a river, and so they're all drunk. They're all drinking, and I'm drinking too, and I'm like, why is everybody going to bed? And I'm looking at I'm like, wow, it's really late. Why am I not tired? Oh, well, we'll just sit here by the fire and do what, just do what normal camping people do. And eventually everybody went to bed, and I was like, I guess everybody's gone.
Okay, so you're explaining how you feel so brilliant. You have all these brilliant ideas, but when you're high in that state, you can't get them out?
No, you can't
can't express them?
You can't. No, you can express them. You just can't organize yourself enough to write them down, store them somewhere where you're going to remember where they're at, and then figure out how to find them again when you need to recall that brilliant idea. So you have them. That's why, it's funny, but not funny. That's why tweakers are constantly, it's the derogatory term for meth addicts is tweakers.
Yeah.
That's why they're always rewiring things. Because they're like, surely I can get this to work better. Because the engineers that studied this for a decade probably don't know anything. It's sad, but that's I
didn't know that was a thing, but they rewire a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's why all their vehicles are torn apart. It's not because they're like, oh, I'm gonna put lights in this. I'm gonna put these blue lights in the car because blue lights are cool. You just get these weird ideas, and shiny objects are so distracting.
Oh my gosh.
And so you'll see them pick up light bulbs. You'll see them we've had now today, with my construction company, I'm like, this is a bad area of town. Don't leave the equipment here because they'll steal the lights. They won't steal anything else on a $250,000 piece of machinery, but they'll cut the lights off.
Oh my gosh.
And the lights are cut so short that you can't use them again. It's like stealing lights out of the front of a Toyota. Like, unless you have that car, they're useless to you, but they steal them anyway.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, you get home from the 3-day rager by yourself.
Yeah.
And then so he shows you how to just put it.
Yeah, how to load a pipe.
Oh my God.
Like that's the term, how to load a pipe.
Okay.
So he shows me how to do that, and then I'm off and running. Like, I start with little bits, and then it would take probably round numbers. Like I would buy a gram or two every few days. So we're talking like the size of a dime, just a tiny little rock that you would just load a little bit of at a time and smash it up and smoke it. And slowly that grew. It was like, so it'd go from there, from a 1 gram bag to a 2 gram bag, from a 2 gram bag to a 4 gram bag. And then, being a business person, I was like, why am I buying this retail? I should definitely buy this wholesale.
Oh my God.
And so rather than buying, $500 worth, I'd buy $5,000 worth. Because that seemed like,
it's a better deal.
Yeah, like
it's like Costco.
Yeah, you're bundling, right? Like, you're going to Costco. I'm going to get this.
The
cheaper.
value pack.
Yeah, I'm going to get the value pack of meth, and then when people need it, I'll have it. And because the other piece is like, I was kind of traveling for work, and you go to a different place, and I don't trust these people. Like, how do you go commit a felony with someone you don't know? And so it was all bad. And like, there was times when I would have somebody go back to my neighborhood at home to go get drugs and then bring it back to me 5-6 hours away.
No way.
So like, I'm mixing drugs in with the work, and then I'm bringing drug addicts into my business. Yikes. And eventually I was like, why go to work when I could just do drugs every day and just deal drugs? And, the side part of that is that I work with my dad. And so like there's no faster way to kill a buzz or a high than to have your parents walk in and say, what are you doing?
Oh, how long were you using before that happened?
It wasn't obvious to anybody.
That's what I was wondering.
Somewhere like between, so that was July. It was like, I didn't get arrested for the first time for 18 months. It was like a year and a half later. Wow. December of 2014 was the first time I got in real trouble. And so it was a bit. It was like, finish the summer out, go through the winter, do the entire next summer. I just went off a cliff at that point, because there was a certain point in time where I couldn't functionally keep a normal work schedule. Like, if your drug habit is growing, you have to either do more drugs or like take time to sleep. And I couldn't work every day and stay functional at work. If I was high enough to actually feel it, then I couldn't sleep. And so like, there was all these things working at each other from the wrong way. And
now your company is construction.
Yeah.
You're not like actually running or working these,
yeah.
You're running these big, huge
on the
machinery.
top of the paving machine, like running everything at the time.
Wow. Oh, God.
Yeah. Running the jobs. And there's places today that I look back and go, I can't even imagine what some of those jobs look like.
You've never gone back to look?
No, there's like, so here's how bad the summer of 2014 got. So I stayed away. So I know that a year into my drug addiction, I stayed away for the entire summer. So 5 hours from us is a little beach town called Coos Bay. And I didn't pay for a hotel room at all for the whole summer because I gambled. Because when you're staying up all night, where do you go?
Casino. Find a casino.
Yeah, because the casino is the only place where you look normal if you're awake in the middle of the night. Or Walmart, but Walmart's a little sketch, right? So I would go to the casino, and I would sit there and just feed $100 bills into the casino. And then I'd win a bunch of money, and then I'd put a bunch more in. And
so they gave you a hotel there at the casino?
Yeah,
they gave you a room?
They comped me rooms because in 100 days, I put $700,000 in the machines.
How much did you leave with after the summer was over?
$600,000 after. Like, I put $700,000 in, I took $600,000 out, so I lost $100,000 in a summer.
In 3 months.
In 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
Like, that was one of those, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, but we can talk about that later. But I was smart enough in the process to take taxes out.
That's so
Just
weird.
just weird things that you do when you're getting high. Like why would I consider taking 20% out for taxes?
And setting it aside? What do you mean you took it out?
Yeah, no, like the casino, when you win a certain amount, like they'll either bring you cash or they'll take some out for taxes and then they'll bring you the difference.
You're like, yeah,
I'm
let's
like,
do that.
Definitely take out 20 or 25%.
Because I'm responsible.
Yeah, well, I was trying to keep up this appearance and everybody had to know. Everybody had to know that, like, it's not normal to sit at a machine in the casino night after night after night, just pumping that machine full of $100.
And it's not even like poker or blackjack. It's literally a slot machine.
Slot machines. Oh yeah. Slot machines. And I'd be playing 2 or 3 or 4 of them at a time.
And you're drinking at the same time?
Yeah.
Drinking,
doing drugs, like whatever it was.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So my parents knew by midsummer, a year later, that something was amiss. But I was like, I'll just stay away enough that they never figure it out.
Why weren't you needed at work?
No, I took some guys to Coos Bay with me to go work. Like I took them down there to go run the hustles that I learned. Basically, I took what I knew and was like, I could cheat people out of a lot of money if I do this way. And like, I mean, the story is that I would take people with me. I had a contractor's license. I also would take somebody that had a license with me, like a driver's license. And I would get the checks for these jobs written to that person and I'd give them 10%.
No way.
So like the crime of fraud is when you cash that check.
Right.
So I took somebody with me and I would do this over and over and over again because I was like, I don't want to go to prison for this. Like, I don't want to do anything bad.
This is petty.
Yeah, I'm
petty
just doing
crime.
drugs. Like, I just need some money.
It's no big deal.
Yeah, so I would take someone with me.
Why is it even illegal?
Yeah, so it, like everywhere I went, I always looked for that slower person that I could, well, a scapegoat. Like I just took somebody with me to take the blame wherever we went.
Wow.
So they would sit, do whatever they do. I keep them high the whole time, and then when we go to work during the day, they would take the check and they would go cash the check at whatever the local bank was, and then.
So you were actually doing construction during the day?
Yeah, like I was still putting driveways in.
How? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean we wouldn't start till 10 or 11 or noon. That's a normal time to start, right?
Yeah, for construction.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like done by noon here, but whatever.
Yeah.
So they started thinking something was amuck.
Yes.
And did they say something right away? Or?
Yeah. So my mom, they said something. Actually, in December of 14, they tried to put an intervention together.
Oh.
So I get in a car accident. There was a girl. She left to go back to her other boyfriend. I was heartbroken over it. I ran out of drugs. I got drunk like at 7 a.m, and I hit somebody head on. So, but I had my drugs in my sock. So the ambulance pulls me out of my truck, takes me to the ER, like at the trauma unit, downtown Portland, and they're cutting my clothes off, and they find the drugs in my sock. And I get a charge. I get a possession of meth.
Right.
And I'm like,
was it a lot?
No, it was like a tiny little baggie.
A couple grams. Okay.
Yeah, tiny little amount. And I'm thinking, because this is how I think, my world's over. My life is ending. I'm going to go to prison for 20 years. Everything's done. I'm in one of those like neck braces, and everything's bad. Like my face is cut up a little bit because I hit somebody head on a highway because I fell asleep. I nodded out from doing drugs. And my parents put together this intervention like 2 days after this. So I get out of the hospital. Multnomah County, where this happened, I got a ticket. I didn't get charged with the crime. I got a ticket. I got a $500 ticket, and then I was supposed to go to 2 days community service, but I was too high to go, so I got in more trouble for that.
Oh my God.
But in Multnomah County, in Portland, like they don't prosecute these things. There's nothing that you're going to get in real trouble for. Just pay the fine and go back to doing drugs. Well, I didn't know that. I was so consumed by fear and paranoia and all these other things that I couldn't possibly get there mentally. And my parents put this intervention together, and they bring like the pastor I grew up with, a counselor that I was seeing. Literally my entire family was in town because my sister was getting married. So there was probably 50 or 100 people in my house, the house that I lived in. And, you know, I'm, of course, in a terrible place mentally.
Right.
And I don't remember anything that was said. All I remember is like seeing these people going, how in the heck are they here, and how do I get out of this?
Right.
And all I remember is them being there, and then when they left, thinking there's no possible way I can get high enough to forget that.
There's no way.
No way. And that's when I went right off the edge of the cliff, because I went harder and deeper into it because there was so much shame, because now not only does everybody know, but I know they know because they were in the living room telling me they knew.
And so you don't remember them. They were supposed to be sharing the stories
they're
of like
we
how
care
you did.
for you, we love you, and what all I heard was, now we know your secret, and that's all that mattered. I was like, well, the gig's up. What am I supposed to do now?
Go get another value pack of meth.
Yeah, go get as high as possible. And so I just became a complete wreck.
Just bailed.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going to work. I'm not. My mom, this is why I know she's an alpha. She had a blank power of attorney that I'd signed years before vacation. She took that blank power of attorney and she duplicated it enough to get me off of everything on the business. She took my names off bank accounts, off of real estate, everything, and said, whoa. And I came to her, I'm like, you're taking my money. And she's like, oh, no, it's still there. You can have it when you get straight.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, so like she was trying to protect me from me because I needed more. I was just going to continue
blown it all.
Taking everything from my family. Because if you love me, the deeper the love you have for me, the more I can exploit you.
Yeah.
And so she was like, no, I've seen this before. And I didn't know this at that time, but my uncles and my grandpa and a lot of my mom's family have struggled with alcoholism and drug abuse.
She never talked about it?
She failed to mention that my entire childhood.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God.
The reason that they don't drink is because my grandfather was an alcoholic who would come home and beat like anybody in his path. Like he would fight anybody. And so she saw that growing up. And she knew how to protect her kids from it, but she thought protecting them from it was the same as hiding them from it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe you should have talked about like the dangers of alcoholism or the dangers of drug abuse, because I just thought it was weird that we had to sit in one spot in Uncle So-and-so's house, but it was actually because there was needles everywhere and we were in a meth lab. Like these are the normal, these are the crazy things. Yes.
And she would still bring you over there.
She would still bring us over there because relationships important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
families
families
everything, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't snitch, you don't but there was a disconnect between what she knew as truth and what we experienced as kids.
Right.
Like I had no idea the danger that I was in.
Yeah.
And so she had some conceptual understanding of what was happening.
Do you really think it would have mattered?
No.
Nah.
No, probably not.
It would have been nice to know, but
it would have been nice to know. Like
I don't think you would have given a shit.
Understand why they made the personal choices for them.
Yeah.
And then why they protected us the way that they thought was important.
But even if you'd have known all those stories.
Like at 18, you're not going to listen to your
shit.
parents anyway.
No.
You're just going to tell them, well, that's great. Thanks for your opinion. I'm going to still go do it.
What a loser. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I'll let you know how that goes.
I'll be back in 3 months.
Yeah. And so I went all in, pushed all my chips in. And
where did you stay?
I was still living, I had a house.
Okay.
That was mine. And that at that point in time, I stopped paying the mortgage. So like up until December or December of 14 or January of 15, like I was close enough in my bills that there was no issues. And then I stopped paying the bills. I went all in on like my policy personally with problems was if the problem exists in 30 days, I'll revisit it again. Right? If somebody sends me a letter, if they don't send me a follow-up letter, I'm going to assume that it fixed itself. And they don't, especially not with the foreclosure system. So in August of that year, I get a notice on my door from the sheriff saying, hey, you forgot to pay the payment. You can't live here anymore. So I became homeless. Like, meanwhile, I'm getting arrested continually 6 times in 7 months.
And you don't even think to ask your parents for money to save your house? Or you just didn't talk to them?
I mean, I talked to them. Actually, I did. The first time I talked to them to save the house, they gave me money, and then I got high on it. Fuck. And then, like, you can't ask.
You can only ask once or twice.
You can only ask for so much.
Yeah.
And that's like where I got. And the last time I got arrested was August 13th of 2015. And that was the time that they checked for meth in my system. And I was
that was just a DUI.
Yeah, it was just a DUI. Yeah. Just the second
Your
one.
second one.
Just the second one in 2 months. And like you get to a point, I was committing crimes. I would go rob people and tell them I did it because I was a coward. I didn't know how to fix the brokenness and the shame and the guilt. And I was hoping somebody else would do it. But when you hang out with losers, they're all like you. They don't have any They don't have a backbone.
Nobody knows how.
Yeah, nobody knows how, and they pull guns and point them at each other, and it's just for show.
Right.
Like, they're just as much of a coward as you are.
Right.
So I was expecting someone else to be better than I was, and it didn't happen. And that was a real wake-up call. And I remember sitting in jail the last time going, well, I can't call them. I don't have anybody to call. Like, there's no more houses. There's no more bridges I can cross. There's no more favors I can call in. I am done. Like, I'm broke. I'm broken. I'm hopeless. I'm 150 pounds. I'm a size 29 waist.
Whoa.
Like, super skinny.
Just for reference for people listening to it, what do you weigh now?
250.
And your waist size?
250.
Yeah.
35.
You're a big guy. So 150
guy.
is scary.
Yeah. So, like, most rooms I walk into at the shoulder, I'm one of the broadest in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was wearing size small t-shirts. Like, just bad.
Do you have any pictures from that time?
Yeah. I've got some mugshots.
Really?
That are pretty gnarly. Yeah.
I'd love to see those.
There's some that I have that my sister and I are in that are just, she's like, I don't even recognize you. You're a totally different person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was the last time. Like, it just kept eroding. Like, I would commit crimes and I was dealing drugs and, and every time you would do something desperate to try to get back to even, it was just worse. Like, the consequence was you were more broken, more broke, more hopeless, had more shame, guilt, everything you were carrying around. Like, there was no way to come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that if I had some sort of success, it would quell the shame or the guilt, and it didn't. All it did was make it worse, because the next day you'd wake up and go, well, I just hurt somebody to get that. And so I'm sitting in jail the last time, and I remember probably the first time that I'd honestly prayed ever. I was like, if I can't die, can you help me? Because I was trying. Like, there are still people today that I run into that are still doing drugs, and they're like, listen, don't do drugs with that guy, because he'll do all your drugs and he'll take all your money and you'll somehow think that it was somebody else's fault. And these are people
You were that good.
Yeah. Well, I learned how to sell. Like, I was a natural born salesperson.
Right.
And then you have all these business skills.
Right.
And misdirection is great. Like,
You're like, I was born for this.
Yeah, I was like, I have a great amount of skill that is very useful in this particular area. And of course, all misguided. And
it's been so painful.
yeah, it was. And so, like, the answer was instant. Like, that time I got out of jail, my mom was like, your dad and I think you have a problem with drugs and alcohol. And I don't know where she learned that phrase, because rather than saying you have a problem, she said, we think you have a problem. And that opened the door and just offered me enough dignity to say, maybe I do. Maybe I do.
Just a little bit.
As if losing 100 pounds, like, in front of your eyes didn't convince anybody that that was actually occurring. And so she said, well, your dad and I would like to help you get some help. So you choose the place, you figure out where you want to go, and we'll get you there. And, meanwhile, the attorneys on this side, I was super selfish. I was so dumb in this whole process. So I get a bunch of charges and get some possession charges and the DUIs. And my attorney, I went to high school with him, and he says, Keith, like, bro, there's no way I'm going to keep you out of prison if you keep adding more to the fire. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what are the options? He goes, either prison or rehab. And I was like, are there girls in rehab? That was the only thing that was how shallow I was as an individual. He said, yeah, I think so. And so I pick a co-ed one. I'm a day late, and I end up in an all-male one. Because I believe, like,
God was like,
yeah,
Pishing.
I believe, like, the saying is it odd or is it God? Like, God was like, listen, bro, you're a dirtbag, and if there are the distraction of females anywhere near you, you're not going to get help.
No way you're going to concentrate on getting well.
Yeah. So I went to rehab in Southern California, and it was a 16-guy rehab. It was basically a fourplex where we all shared rooms with guys. And 37 guys came through that rehab in the 6.5 weeks I was there. And there's 8 of them that are dead. And I'm the only one with the same sobriety date.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh.
And I talked to a few of them, from time to time. Some of them are doing good, some of them aren't. And there's a lot of them that I'll never talk to again. Because they, like, in the year
just disappear.
Yeah, they're dead.
Well, the dead ones, obviously, but yeah.
And they're in this cycle. And I remember sitting there in that rehab, and looking around and like you hear the stories, and this was like being back in the dive bar again, where these guys are lying about everything in their life. And this one guy, he starts telling us how he was in the military, he was a sniper, he also was a CEO of this company and all this stuff. And one dude to my right says, bro, based on your work experience, you'd be like 108. And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, no, like if you did 2 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then you ran that company to 100 million and all, like, there's no way you got to be over 100 years old.
Yeah, a little too young, buddy.
No, I'm only 32. And he goes, yeah, you're a liar. He goes, we're all liars. That's why we're here.
Right.
Like, we don't know how to live life. So let's just be honest with each other. You don't have to lie to kick it. Like, we're not on a winning streak. We're in rehab. And he goes, we get our cell phones, and they tell us when to eat, and they tell us when to get in the van, and they tell us to get out of the van, they tell us to go to sleep, and when to wake up. Like, we don't have any skills for life. And that was one of those moments where I look back and go, whoa, how did I get here?
Wow.
And then how do I get out?
Yep.
How do I get out? Because I was figuring out that I had so much crap to deal with.
Yep.
Because when you finally separate yourself, and this is why rehab is such a struggle, if they don't teach you that when you get sober or when you get clean, your life gets way worse for a long time before it gets any better. People are like, oh, just get sober and everything gets better. No, get sober and then you start going to court dates, and then you start going to all the counseling things. Then you have to go to community service and pay restitution. And then you realize, oh my gosh, I have $50,000 in fines to get my driver's license back. Oh my God. Like, there's so much stacked against you.
The consequences
that are rolling in now that you actually have to listen to, that your life gets really hard. And unless you have a support system or a family structure that's around you, it's really difficult to climb out of the hole.
When he said that, did you think, is that the first time you realized that you're a big fat liar? Or did you know that the whole time? No,
well, I knew that like the last 6 months, because everybody was like, oh, you're doing drugs. I'm like, where did you get that?
Come on.
Come on. I just party a lot. Like, you forgot to eat for like a year. Like, there's no way you are this size with drinking Red Bulls and Monsters. Oh, no. And that's all I would drink. Red Bulls, I would eat candy. That's all I wanted. And that's normal if somebody's drinking just energy drinks and just candy, there's a high likelihood, and they're losing massive amounts of weight, that they might be doing drugs.
Yeah. It's your hint.
It's a hint.
Oh my gosh. So you're sitting there and you want to get out. How am I going to get out? Then what?
Yeah, sitting there was a realization. I looked at the guy. This guy's name is Thomas. He's a 6'6" black man who dealt drugs on Skid Row.
Whoa.
Like, he goes, if you think you have problems, I'll introduce you to some that have names. Oh. And I was throwing a fit one day, and I remember this. I'm 31 years old in rehab, throwing a fit because I can't have an energy drink. And the people in the staff in there can. And I'm like, do you know that my parents paid blah, blah, blah money for me to be here? It's so unfair that you have this. And he like stands up, comes over, gets in my face and says, when are you going to take responsibility for the choices you made to get yourself here? And I was like, yeah, you got me. Like,
why is that like a thing?
Yeah. Well, I was like, I don't have an answer.
Do I have to do that?
I don't have an answer, because your point is very valid.
Shit.
I haven't taken any responsibility for what my choices were to get me here.
Right.
And he said, so that was the moment that I looked at him, and he goes, we'll talk after this. And he pulls me aside and he says, like, you have the biggest opportunity to get better, but you're also whining about energy drinks. So like, which one is it? Is it the energy drinks? Is it like this social justice campaign to get energy drinks in rehab that you're really like, what are you pioneering for?
Right.
And he said, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you a little bit of rope of freedom around here, because I was way older than most of these guys. Most of these guys were like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
Oh my God.
And I'm 31 years old, like actually had run a business, actually had been somebody in the community, been on advisory boards and community groups, like, and these kids had never even experienced paying a bill on time in their whole life.
Right.
And he said, like, if you can just commit to me to making some changes, like, I can make sure you have some freedom around here. Like, if you want an energy drink, we can go get you an energy drink. We can take you across the street to Taco Bell. And so I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, I can commit to maybe considering some changes. And the next day I went to an AA meeting, and there was a guy in there who looks at me, and we were going around saying how many days we had sober. And I was like, 2 weeks. And this guy goes, "You're the most important person in the room." I was like, about time somebody realized that. And finally I'd arrived. And that guy took an interest in my life, and he started telling me what he had been through with the guilt and shame and his experiences. None of them were similar. He was a hippie from Baltimore and lived in a van on the beach in San Diego or Santa Monica.
Yeah.
But he was telling me his story, and all I heard was me in his story. And so I started to identify with these people, and I started listening to how their lives could change. And they took me to some other meetings where these guys were like running actual big businesses and had wives and had kids and showed up for the PTA meeting and all of these things. And I was like, man, that would be cool. And I was like, I want that. And then I heard a statistic. This is one that, like, if you have somebody that's super stubborn and they grab one of these, that same guy, Thomas, has us look around. And this is 3 or 4 weeks into rehab. He goes, only one of you guys is going to make it to a year. And there's a good chance that many of you guys in here are going to be dead before that guy makes it to a year. And I was like, hold my beer, bro. Because the good thing about when you burn the ships, because I didn't know that I was doing that. I didn't have that mentality when I was out living my life, but I'd burn the ships. Like, I took the ship to the other place, I'd conquered the island, and then somebody conquered me back, and I didn't have anything left.
And you burnt his ship, and then another one came and you burnt his ship.
I burnt all the ships. Everyone that came in, I just kept burning them. I was like, surely nobody wants to leave because this is a great place.
Yeah.
But I burned the ships, and I didn't have anywhere to go but up.
Yeah.
And that's when the realization came, like, clear. It was like, I have so much opportunity. And here's the other one. So my parents, for the first time in 2.5 years, could sleep. Like, they could sleep at night. So the only time that my mom told me she could sleep is either when I was in jail and the day I went to rehab. She's like, I trusted that I could go to sleep and not wake up with a phone call from whatever the local number is. This is unknown or whatever it is that is the local police.
Right.
But my dad, a month in, books a one-way flight to rehab.
Oh, boy.
And these guys come out, and I'm upstairs in my room doing, I don't know what. I didn't have a phone. I have no idea what I was doing. Probably watching TV, eating snacks, because I put on like 50 pounds in a month.
Needed to.
Yeah, put on a boatload of weight in a month.
Good.
And one of the guys comes up, he says, Keith, your dad's here. I'm like, oh, great. Fantastic.
Oh, no.
This is awesome. I'm going to have to look in those eyes of guilt and shame and, like, the eyes of disappointment. I still call them, like, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization is what Alcoholics Anonymous calls it. And I look at, like, my parents looked at me with the eyes of disappointment. And they look at you like when a rabbit gets run over on the road and you're like, oh, poor thing. Like, they looked at you with pity.
Yeah.
And I was dreading having to see them. I was dreading having to look at my parents, my family. And my dad comes, and what happened was just mind-blowing to me, because he's talking, and my dad's one of those guys that can get along with just about anybody. And he's got 5 or 10 guys in the smoke room outside just chatting it up. And he was always like, don't smoke around me. But all these guys were smoking cigarettes right next to him. And, you know, he'd grown up in this process, realizing that, like, cigarettes are probably a small price, by the way. Like, let the kid smoke.
Do that.
If he wants to smoke, like, let him smoke cigarettes as opposed to other things.
Yes.
But all these guys are talking to him, and they ask him, I hear them ask him, when are you going home? And he said, I booked a one-way ticket. And they're like, well, why? And he goes, well, I'm going to stay as long as it takes. And literally some of those dudes cried that night. And they were like, all I ever wanted is someone to care for me like your dad cares for you.
Oh, my God.
And
he stayed there at rehab with you?
Yeah, he stayed at a hotel for like 4 or 5 days. And this doesn't happen, but the counselor was like, I was like, hey, my dad wants to take us, a couple of us to go to dinner, or a couple of us to go to the meeting. And he's like, well, we're not supposed to, but your dad seems like a pretty good guy. So, I don't think your dad's a danger to you guys drinking or doing drugs. So that's fine. You can take a couple of friends and you guys can go. And he stayed for a week, and every day he was there. And we went to counseling. We went to therapy. Some of the things that I did drugs over, I was able to tell him. He didn't know this until we went to counseling, but We filed bankruptcy as a company and as individuals in 2012.
Shit.
Because 2009 happened.
Right.
Business was really, really hard.
Yep.
And I made some choices in business that my dad was tied to that sunk him.
Oh, no.
And when we filed bankruptcy, he said, I lost my legacy.
Oh.
But what I heard was, you took my legacy.
Right.
And I wore that, and I couldn't look at him, and I couldn't like face him, and I couldn't figure out all of those things. And when I went into the therapy session, and we had this therapist moderator in between us, my dad says, hold on, let me respond to that. He goes, you're taking liability and responsibility for something that I was a 40-year-old man. Mm-hmm. I could have said no at any point. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm equally at fault as you in that process, and I'm sorry that you heard that, but that's not what I meant. Mm. And he goes, and if it took bankruptcy again to try to do this, and he goes, I would do it again to experience it with my boys. Like, if any one of you wanted to do this, I would take that risk, because you guys are more important than any amount of money.
Wow.
And so, but that was that God complex. I didn't realize that other people had free will. I didn't realize that other people had choices, and I just felt responsible for everything that had ever happened around me. Mm-hmm. I felt responsible for a divorce. I felt responsible for a bankruptcy, responsible for my parents' financial upheaval.
Oh my God.
Like, they had a beach house. We had all these other investments that all went back to the banks. And I'm like, well, we're just going to be in the poorhouse forever. And he said some things to me in those moments where I was like, okay, well, maybe my dad is a dad.
Wow.
And maybe we just took a wrong turn somewhere, and we can right this ship. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning. That was like where I realized that I had a choice at 31 years old to remake myself. And the greatest part was, and you guys get to see this now, like, I'm pretty open about it.
I love it.
The more that I tell my story, the less power anybody has over it in my life.
Right.
And I figured that out at a year sober. So we had this building where I used to deal drugs out of it. I lived there when I got homeless at the end. All these terrible things. And the landlord was offered more money from a weed grower to take the shop from us, because that was big 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And the owner, the landlord, comes up and he says, I'm going to kick you out, and I'm going to tell everybody what you did. And I was terrified. I was like, I'm 6 months sober. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does this, what happens to the business if everybody knows I'm a drug addict?
Right. And
my dad says something to me. He goes, well, everybody who knows anything already knows.
They already know.
And I was like, yeah, I guess they do, huh? And he goes, well, yeah, like, you went from what you were to driving like stolen cars.
And wrecking them.
Yeah, and wrecking them. And then
going to jail.
And then doing it again. He goes, it's not a secret. And I realized in that moment that I was like, wait a second. I get to tell this story. If I tell the story, then you don't have any control over how it's told.
Amazing.
And so I started telling the story, and I will tell the story forever.
Good.
Because it gives me the ability to help other people. And I really believe this with passion, that the last thing people need to hear about your life when it's going sideways is that it's going sideways.
Right.
They need to hear something about their life that says, hey, I know your life's going sideways and everything feels like it's out of control, but the reality is you have a part in it. And you can turn the wheel of your life back this way or back this way. Like, you can change the course of it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
No.
And that's what it became. Like, I literally did have $50,000 that I owed to get my driver's license back. Huge resentments against my parents because I got a $200 a week allowance when I got sober.
Wow.
Like, and 100 went to cigarettes and coffee. And then I didn't realize, I was like, why are they only giving me $200? Like, we're creating thousands of dollars a week.
Yep.
I deserve more. And then fast forward 9 months, and we get a letter from Clackamas County. I get a letter from Clackamas County saying that all of your fines and fees have been paid. Aww. Because what my mom had been doing is taking all of what I should have been earning, and she was writing a check every week to Clackamas County. Aww. I would never have done that.
No,
like, I would have got on a payment plan, and 7 or 8 years later, we'd still be paying $20 a month.
Exactly.
But she was like, she did for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Aww.
She said, we're gonna make sure that, you're getting enough money to eat and enough of this. And she was paying that off. So I did have a good family. I did have a good support system. And I do feel fortunate for that. because there's so many things that they did that shortened the lifespan of the punishment that I should have had. Because if I got what I deserved, I'd still be sitting in a concrete box somewhere.
Right.
Like for the little robberies and all the stolen cars and all the things that I did, I should have gotten some prison time.
Well, if you lived in a different state, you would have.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon is very accepting of unfortunate things. Yeah,
they love crime.
They love crime.
It's
and
great.
They
love criminals. Give them free
understand.
drugs. I don't get it. I don't know how you live there.
Well, it's different 30 miles outside it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, we live in a nice community where,
of course,
we don't have that at our front door.
That's good.
You can drive to it if you would like to visit.
In 10 minutes,
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's good. I know you family has lived there for a long time and you've been in business for a long time. It's not like you can just pick up and move anyway. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had no idea this was going to be more of or not just as much of an inspirational story of how to get sober, but also parenting 101. Yeah. Your parents are incredible. I keep thinking every time they do something, I was like, would I have done that? Well, if my kids get into trouble, now I know what to do.
Yeah.
So God forbid any of our children have any struggles with drugs or alcohol, but chances are some of them might. Yeah. And some people listening.
1 in 4.
Holy shit. I mean, your parents are they blow my mind. I wish I could meet them someday. We should have invited them to dinner.
Yeah.
That's okay. So you made it a year. Did you check on your buddies at that time? Did you know how many had passed?
No. So they, we had a group thread for a while, the guys in rehab, and they just kind of started falling off. There was a couple guys that one of them literally overdosed like 3 weeks after I left. And that really impacted me. And there's some stories that really changed the trajectory of where I was headed in life. I don't know how this happened, and like we talk about it today, and I don't know why my parents agreed to this, but the girl that I was dating at the time was in jail while I was in rehab. So my parents agreed to let her move in to my parents' house because I didn't have a place to go.
Right.
So I get out of rehab, go home, and she relapses in my parents' house.
Shit.
She relapses. She's shooting heroin, and she like collapses on the floor of their bathroom. And that changed, like that moment. What my mom said is she dead? What should I do? She called me because she was worried about how I would react,
right,
as opposed to calling 911. And so I'm like, FaceTime me. And this is one of those times where I can vividly remember what I said, who was on the other end of the phone, and I wish that I had those words back. So my mom FaceTimes me, and I'm like, put the phone closer to her face, pull up her eyes. So she pulls up her eyes, and then she does this, like if you ever see someone overdose on heroin, like they'll gurgle. So there's a gurgle high, and then there's a death gurgle. And she gurgles, and I instantly laugh and say, oh, she's just high. And I wanted those words back so bad, and it hit me in that moment like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I did to other people. This is what I always thought that I was just hurting myself, and they're like, just leave me alone, I'll go live my life. And in that moment, it was plain and obvious that what I had done was hurting other people, and not just hurting them, like affecting them, because I took my mom's innocence in that moment.
Right.
That girl was invited because I asked him to, and that girl overdosed, and all the things happened in her home, in her safe space where her grandkids are, because I asked for it. And I realized, and that changed the course of what I did. So that one was a big one.
I'm glad that mom was around and you weren't. That wouldn't have happened that way.
Yeah. So that was one of those changing moments. And then there's another one. So there was this kid, Dakota, that I had a car, and then this other kid, Jeremiah, had a license. So Jeremiah would come pick me up. We would go to recovery meetings. And then a little while into this process, we started picking Dakota up. Because Dakota's like, oh, I live not too far from where my parents live. We'll pick him up, and then we'll go get coffee. We'll go to the meeting, and we'll come home. And my sponsor, and this whole time, is like, hey, we got to start making amends. We got to repay people. And I was like,
you got a few steps.
Yeah.
You got.
He goes, you got some reparations. You got some.
Remember
things
those 12 steps? You've only done one.
You got to pay and make things right. And I was like, oh. So he goes, pick an easy one. Like, what's a small financial one that 100% is totally your fault, and you owe somebody some money. So the story is I popped the sidewalls of this guy's tires, all 4 of them. And people like me don't have cars. We borrow them or we steal them from somebody. And this car happened to be that guy's parents' car.
Oh, shit.
So And my sponsor, I was like, I don't know how to get a hold of Derek's parents. And my sponsor happened to be a private investigator. And like 5 seconds later, he's like, oh, here's their phone number. Here's their address. Here's where they work. And I'm like, oh, this really backfired.
Damn it.
Yeah, this really didn't go like I thought it was going to go. And so I set up a time to go meet these people. And I walk in, and I must have looked like I was just high out of my mind because I'm dripping. It's March. I'm dripping in sweat outside their house because I'm so nervous. Like I told the cops that I didn't pop those tires. I'm about to walk into these people's house and admit that I did.
Yeah.
I'm like, can't you go to prison for that? It's a $600 crime. There is no prison sentence for a $600 crime.
Got it.
Doesn't mean it feels any less. At the time, I was like, this is totally scary and terrifying, and I don't know what to do. So I walk in, and I tell these people, like, look, I'm sober. I don't ever want to have to feel how I felt. I don't ever have to live like I lived, and I did do that. I'd like to pay for it. And she pulls out a receipt and says, well, it was this much. And it was like $700 or $800, and I was like $40 or $50 short because I'd been saving $100 a week of my $200 allowance to pay for this.
Wow.
And my sponsor would make me show it every week because I'm one of those guys who's like, well, maybe I can double this real quick. And he's like,
go to the
no,
casino real quick.
That's not the way this works. I want to see it every week, and I'm going to write the serial numbers of those bills down. I'm like, ooh, brutal.
Good sponsor.
Yeah. So I walk in there, I'm $40 short, and I feel like the little kid that my parents are looking at with pity again. Like, am I ever going to be enough? Is this ever going to work out in my favor? And she looks at me and she says, what you've got is fine. I want you to know that I forget his name. He and I have a debt of gratitude to you because what you don't know is that for the last 3 months, you've been picking my grandson up and taking him to AA meetings because Dakota was her grandson.
And you never knew that?
I didn't know that. I had no idea. So I walk into this place, and this lady is like crying. She goes, for the first time in 18 years, my grandson was sober at Christmas, so we owe you a debt of gratitude, and the money is fine. Whatever you have, we'll take, and that's enough.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I walk in feeling like the biggest piece of crap in the world, and I walk out feeling whole, feeling full. And I was like a restored human being. And that's what really changed, like cemented the change in my life to righting all the wrongs. Because I was like, every time I walk into one of these where I feel like somebody's going to judge me or ridicule me or tell me that I'm the piece of garbage that I am, it always works out way better.
Oh.
Because I walk in and admit, like, yeah, I did steal from you, or I was a dirtbag.
Honest.
I was honest. Like, you own what you are, and then say, how did that affect you?
Yeah.
How can I make that right? Is there any way that I can do that? And every time I've done it with principles, it's always worked out in some way that I couldn't possibly have predicted.
Right.
It's like, yeah, this is great. I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing. I got stories like that for days.
Oh, I wish we had 9 hours. I want to hear them all because it makes me so emotional. It's so beautiful. So just hear what effects you're having, and you, in even everybody in general. You know, we really don't know what effect we have on somebody, good or bad.
Yeah, and it takes years sometimes.
Yeah,
like it comes back a long time later. Like
it might not ever come back, but sometimes you can do something good. And you feel like, oh, you realize that you did something really good after doing so many bad things. Yeah. And having so much shame and so much guilt. I mean, that's beautiful. I wish I could listen to those stories all day long, but I know we got to wrap it up pretty soon.
There's some really funny ones. There's some really sad ones. There's some really cool ones. Yeah. Lots of crime and fast stuff. And the reality is, like, if you fast forward all the way to the end of the process, what I figured out is that if I owned who I was, and then I talked about it, I didn't have to tell anybody how to fix themselves. I just told them how I do it. So when guys are like, hey, how did you go from that to this? Well, it's really easy. You just be honest. First off, you got to like understand where you are. You got to be honest about who you are. And then you got to say, how can I help someone else? Because I heard John Maxwell say the other day, and we were in the same room, and he goes, the people that serve always get what they want. Always get what they want. If you make other people's dreams come true, and you can walk them through the shadows of life or the valleys of life, then you're, as a byproduct, you're going to get your dreams. Because if you create this wholeness in other people and you can walk them to the promised land, then somehow, some way, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, puts it all right. He gives everything back. And that's what it's about. Like today, I get to have really fun conversations with my employees. We're a second chance employer. which means that sometimes things go missing, sometimes things get wrecked. But at the end of the day, when somebody finally gets it, when the one guy gets it, he becomes like a policeman for your entire business. Because I don't have to tell people when they're doing things sideways anymore, because there's 10 dudes who will. They're like, hey, bro, we don't do that here. And they're like, no. He goes, no, I don't think you understood. We don't. We don't do that
That's
here.
not going to fly.
Yeah, that's not going to fly. Well, who are they going to fire me? And he goes, I don't know what they're going to do, but we don't do that here.
I don't think you should be worried about what Keith's going to do.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. Like,
wow.
They protect the people that protect them, and we took a chance on them, and we took that chance because my parents did that for me.
Oh.
And I'm like, we owe that to pay that forward.
I love that.
And the impact we have today. So like, let me bring this home.
Yeah.
So my dad, it was like, how do I minister? How do I disciple these young men? And what we figured out is that most of the men in the world don't have dads. So sometimes women do, sometimes but most of the kids today under 40, like most of them are from a broken home. Like it's just the truth.
It is.
And if they aren't, they're from some terrible situation, and there are a few that don't suffer from this, and good for you. Right. But most people do. They don't understand how to goal set. They don't understand what's normal. And so what we've figured out is that we tell them what the standard is. We also coach them how to get to the standard, and then we provide a work dad. So my dad sits down with these guys, and you would be shocked at how many 30, 40, 50-year-old men or women have never been asked, what do you want out of life? What do you want out of life?
No one's ever asked them.
No one's ever asked them. And when we say, what's your budget? They go, I don't understand the question. So we do finance classes. We do quarterly goal setting with them, that the only rule is it can't be work related. So do you want your kids back? Do you want to get off probation? Do you want your marriage to be better? Do you want to work a budget? Do you want to have financial freedom? What are the things that are going to make your life better? Because if I can improve your life at home, then you're more likely to stay at work.
100%.
So we offer these things and this guidance that paternal and maternal influences do. And we've figured out, and I tell people when we do conferences, I'm like, go talk to all of my employees. They'll tell you exactly what they make. They won't come work for you. You can offer them whatever you want. They're not going to come work for you because nobody cares more than we do. Nope. Because it goes back to how much you pour into people. And we believe this. Your life is going to be better here than it'll be anywhere else. Because we figured out that if you just care and you just show people how to love each other, then it builds. And you have this culture and it's just euphoric and it's attractive. Everybody's like, how do I get into the club?
It's a family. Yeah,
it's a family. Yep. It's a family that they've always
wanted.
Yeah, and they feel wanted. And we had goal setting or some things that have come up recently because we're growing. We went from a little sidebar about our business. We went from $1 million the year we got sober to 15 last year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How many employees?
40.
Holy shit.
We went from 6 guys, with me and my dad being 2 of them, to 40 employees now.
Amazing.
And, and it's just going to continue building. And we've started multiple businesses, not just this one. Like, there's a lot going on.
So cool.
And so we, like, as you start to burst at the seams and have these growing pains, like, the guys are like, how are you going to have the conversation with so-and-so about what they're doing? And I said, oh, you think I'm going to do it?
Oh, you are.
Interesting. Well, we're going to have this, and I just introduced the idea of, we call it the core values assessment. So we take our 5 core values, and I said, now be careful how you answer these, because everybody's answering these about you. Just remember that. You get to tell people, if you don't like what they're doing, sometimes meets or never meets our core values. And the only way I'm going to get involved is if they have multiple people who say the same thing. And then I'm going to ask them, why would people say that about you? I don't need to know who said it.
Right.
It doesn't help.
Doesn't matter.
But I'm just going to start a conversation. And they're like, oh. And I said, just remember when you answer these that somebody's answering them about you. And they're like, oh. I'm like, so you get to be heard, but you also have to be told what this is about. And I'm like, so this fixes a lot of things, because everybody's like, oh, God, I want to talk personally with that person about, hey, I don't like that you leave the trash this, or I don't like that you're a slob, or maybe you should use soap when you shower. Right? Like, we're going to be adults, and we're going to create this relationship in which you take accountability for what your part of the solution is. And so we're figuring out how to raise grown people in the business. And it's fascinating to watch because I'm one of those late grower-uppers. I was at 31. I was driven to rehab by my mom and picked up and taken to work and then driven to an AA meeting because I didn't have a driver's license.
Right.
And now I get to coach people like, look, you don't have to stay here, but this is where you're at. And the reality is it's because you made choices that got you here.
Yes.
So we need to make choices that get you to where you want to go next.
Incredible.
And it's your choice. And that's really what, like, this whole thing, this whole process, that everything that I learned, to me, it's all about choices. I had a choice to say no the first time I did drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I had a choice every time after that. I knew it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was, but inside, like, if I'm being totally honest, that still quiet voice deep inside my soul, every time was like, there's nothing right about this.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
And all the choices then on, I just kept rationalizing and defending what I was doing. But today I realize that when something's going sideways, relationships, money, like, some choice got me here. Which one was it? And how do we right the ship? And that's really what it's about. For me, it's about choices and realizing that at 31, I had one. I always thought somebody else made the choice and I just ended where I ended. And that's not it at all.
Wow. Oh, it's so good. So good. Do you think that formula that you just spelled out, taking accountability, making choices, core values, all of these things, setting goals, having a mentor, having a community, having a family, there's success leaves clues, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that same formula is I feel like that's the same formula for building self-worth. Like they're building their own self-worth by all of this work, right?
Yeah, you have to do esteemable things to have self-esteem.
That's good.
That's what,
I'm going to quote that.
Yeah, my sponsor told me, he goes, you and your half self-esteem and her half self-esteem can't make a whole esteem.
No, it's not
right?
what esteem.
Your self-esteem, you have to do esteemable things, and then eventually you wake up one day and you have a self-esteem.
Do esteemable things.
Yeah, so how he taught me that, I went to, he dropped me off at Safeway one afternoon, and he said, I want you to put carts away. I was like, what? How is this useful? And he goes, I want you to put carts away. And when you put the carts away, ask people how they're doing. So for like 2 hours, he sat in his pickup and watched me put carts away. I would go take the carts from people as they're putting their groceries away, and I'd push them to the cart return. And when there was nobody there, he goes, why don't you take those 10 that are in the cart return back inside? And then just interact with people.
Do I work here?
Yeah. And I was like, what is this all about? And 2 hours later, he goes, tell me about the conversations you had with those people. And I realized that none of those people knew that I was a drug addict. No. And none of those people knew my story, but I was asking them about their stories and asking them how their days were. And he said, did anybody tell you were worthless? And I was like, no, nobody did. Matter of fact, nobody even talked to me like I was less of a person at all. Even
talking about you at all.
Ever.
It's not about you at all.
And he said, remember this, you are not as big of a deal as you think you are.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, wow.
God bless that sponsor. He's an angel, isn't he?
Yeah, he was a drug addict as a cop and would steal people's drugs. So he's not an angel.
But wow. Did he stay sober?
Yeah, he lives here now.
Oh, thank God. I'm going to have to get him on the show. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, I think he lives right here in
No
Gilbert.
way. Yes. I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we better wrap this up. I could go all night, literally, like all night. Thank you so much, Keith. How can people find you?
I'm on every social channel.
You even do Twitter?
I just started doing Twitter because my video guy said, put your random thoughts down and we'll see what the Twitter universe grabs. And so I've been posting like one-line thoughts.
Okay.
So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, they're all the same. Keith Callaway Jr.
Okay. No spaces, no dashes, no nothing. How'd you do that?
I have no idea.
I couldn't get Karen Stanley to save my life. I couldn't even get Mrs. Karen Stanley.
I couldn't get Keith Callaway, but the Junior changes everything.
Oh, JR at the end. Okay, make sure you do the JR at the end.
Yep.
Thank you. For everybody listening, thank you so much for being here. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. And God bless you. And you can create the life that you want, and just one day at a time. Create today, and God bless you.